After studying this module, you shall be able to understand Piaget's idea of cognitive change, understand the characteristics of Piaget's stages of cognitive development, critically evaluate the theory, and know the relevance in educational settings. Introduction. Your Piaget's prominent work in his theory on the 4 stages of cognitive development has been discussed. He was one of the most influential researchers in the area of developmental psychology in the 20th century, whose primary interest was in biological influences on how we come to know and the developmental stages we move through as we acquire this ability. Piaget believed that the child plays an active role in the growth of intelligence and learns by doing. He regarded the child as a philosopher who perceives the world only as he experienced it. Therefore, most of the Piaget's inspiration in cognitive and intellectual development came from observations of children. Piaget's theory is based on stages, whereby each stage represents a qualitatively different type of thinking. Children in stage 1 cannot think the same as children in stage 2, 3 or 4, etc. Transitions from one stage to another are generally very fast, and the stages always follow an invariant sequence. Another important characteristic of his stage theory is that they are universal. The stages will work for everyone in the world, regardless of their differences. Piaget believed that cognitive development is cumulative, that is, understanding a new experience grows out of a previous learning experience. Piaget acknowledged that there is an interaction between a child and the environment, and this is a focal point for his theory. He believed a child cannot learn unless they are constantly interacting with their environment, making mistakes and then learning from them. He defined children as lone scientists. He did not identify any need for teachers or adults in cognitive development. Children have all the cognitive mechanisms to learn on their own, and the interaction with their environment allows them to do so. Main elements of Piaget's cognitive development theory. There are 3 elements to Piaget's theory. Schema, the processes that enable the transition from one stage to another. The 4 stages of cognitive development. Schema is the basic building block of intelligent behavior, a form of organizing information that a person uses to interpret the things he or she sees, hears, smells, and touches. A schema can be thought of as a unit of knowledge relating to one aspect of the world, including objects, actions, and abstract concepts. Schemata help individuals understand the world they inhabit. They are cognitive structures that represent a certain aspect of the world and can be seen as categories which have certain preconceived ideas in them. We use schemas to understand and to respond to situations. We store them and apply them when needed. For example, schema for Christmas may include Christmas trees, presents, giving money, green, red, gold, winter, Santa Claus, etc. Someone else may have an entirely different schema such as Jesus, birth, church, holiday, Christianity, etc. Of course, there are schemata for all kinds of things, that is yourself, which is self schemata, other people, people schemata, events or situations, event schemata, and roles or occupations, role schemata. The process. Assimilation. Simply the process of incorporating new information into a pre-existing schema. So, with the dog example, the child assimilated the Labrador's information into the old dog schema. Assimilation is essentially fitting new information into schemata we already have in place. Unfortunately, this can lead to stereotyping. For example, if an old lady sees a teenager mug another person, she might assimilate violence or crime into her teenage schema. Next time she sees a teenager, her schema will be applied to them, and although they may be kind persons, she will probably show prejudice. Assimilation is normally a simple process as new information already fits the pre-existing categories. Accommodation. When coming across a new object for the first time, a child will attempt to apply an old schema to the object. For consistency, let's use the dog example again. The child may have 4 legs, furry, in their dog schema. When coming across another similar animal, such as a cat, they may say, "Look, a dog." That's assimilation. However, when told that it's actually a cat, not a dog, they will accommodate the new information into another schema. They will now form a cat schema. Not all four-legged furry animals are dogs. Some are cats too. They have accommodated the new information. Adaptation. Assimilation and accommodation are the two parts of adaptation, which is simply what it says, adapting our schemata to make an accurate model of the world we live in. It is a form of learning, but an entirely different form of the kind you'd see in behaviorist psychology, for example. Equilibrium. Piaget suggested that humans naturally strive to achieve a cognitive balance. There must be a balance between applying prior knowledge, assimilation, and changing schemata to account for new information. Accommodation. Piaget suggested that when a child has a schema which doesn't fit reality, there is tension in the mind. By balancing the use of assimilation and accommodation, this tension is reduced and we can proceed to higher levels of thought and learning. Equilibration. Now, the 4 stages of cognitive development. Piaget identified the following 4 stages in development of cognition. Sensory motor, that is ages birth through 2. Pre-operational, ages 2 through 7. Concrete operations, ages 7 through 11. And formal operations, ages 11 through 16. Stage 1, the sensory motor stage, birth to approximately 2 years. During this stage, information is received through all the senses. The child tries to make sense of the world during this stage, and as the name suggests, only senses and motor abilities are used to do so. The child utilizes innate behaviors to enhance this learning process, such as sucking, looking, grasping, crying, and listening. To make this even more complex, there are 6 sub-stages of this one stage. To begin, the child uses only reflexes and innate behavior. Towards the end of this stage, the child uses a range of complex sensory motor skills. The sub-stages are as follows. Reflexes, 0 to 1 month. The child uses only innate reflexes. For example, if a nipple or dummy is put into his mouth, they'll reflexively suck on it. If an object is placed in their palm, the hand will automatically grab it. These reflexes have the sole function of keeping the child alive. Secondly, primary circular actions. The child now has a fixation with its own body with regards to behavior. They will perform actions repeatedly on themselves. They also begin to refine reflexes here to form complex versions of them. Thirdly, secondary circular reactions. 4 to 8 months. At around 4 months, the child begins to take an interest in their environment. Their behavior is secondary. They notice that they can actually influence events in their world. For example, they can drop a teddy which bashes a ball on the floor. Although this occurs, the infant will not make conscious connections between what they do and the consequences. They merely observe that their actions have interesting effects. Coordination of secondary circular reactions. This is 8 to 12 months. At this point, the child begins to engage in goal-directed behavior. They begin to develop cause-effect relationships. So rather than crawl over to a teddy in a cart to pick it up, they might instead pull the cart over with the teddy in to acquire it. The child effectively knows that their behavior will have a certain consequence. At this stage, object permanence is acquired. Then tertiary circular reactions, 12 to 18 months. At this stage, children like to use creativity and flexibility with their previous behaviors, and the result of their experimentation often leads to a different outcome. So rather than grabbing a box, they might instead try to tilt or manipulate it. Sixth is symbolic or mental representation, 18 to 24 months. At this stage, the child develops symbolic thought and the ability to mentally represent objects in their head. Normally, the child would need to resort to trial and error to achieve a desired effect. Now, however, the child can plan to some extent and mentally construct the consequences of an action in their head. Of course, predictions are not always accurate, but it is a step from trial and error. There are two key examples of mental representation in children: object permanence and deferred imitation. Object permanence is when objects exist even when out of sight. In the first three stages, children will not attempt to search for an object which is hidden from their view. In their mind, the object simply ceases to exist as they cannot see it. At substage 4, however, they show this characteristic of object permanence. If an object is hidden from them, they'll attempt to find it but will repeatedly look in the same place, even if the object is moved. The so-called A not B error. However, by substage 6, the child is able to mentally represent the object in their mind, leading to exploration for an object even if it is moved. They'll continue to look for an object until they find it, as they understand objects exist regardless of where they are. Deferred imitation is simply the imitation of behavior a child has seen before. As a child can mentally represent behavior they have seen, they are able to enact it through playing and in other situations. So a child might talk down a toy telephone or steer a toy car around the room. Evaluation. Bauer found that children display object permanence at much younger age than Piaget suggested. Children at 3.5 months show surprise and elevated heart rate when a screen is removed to reveal an object which has disappeared than when the object remains. Willatz showed that children plan to move obstacles to desired toys through planning much earlier than Piaget's theory would suggest they could. Stage 2, the pre-operational stage, the mental representation of the sensory motor stage provides a smooth transition to semiotic functioning in the pre-operational stage. This essentially means that a child can use one object to represent other. For example, a child swinging their arms in a circular motion might represent the wheels on a train, or sticking their arms and the running might symbolize the movement of an aeroplane. This shows the relationship children can form between language, actions and objects at this stage. A major characteristic of this stage is egocentrism, perception of the world in relation to oneself only. Children struggle to perceive situations from another point of view or perspective, as shown by Piaget and Inhelder's Three Mountains task. In this study, children were asked what can be perceived from certain positions on a 3D model. It can be seen in the diagram alongside. The child would have been asked what view does Piaget have. In the actual study, though, they have shown around 8 cards of possible viewpoints rather than 3. As you can imagine, the children struggle to decentralize and pick the correct picture. Another feature of this stage is conservation. Children struggle to understand the difference in quantity and measurements in different situations. For example, suppose a child is shown a short fat beaker full of water. When that water is transferred entirely to a tall thin beaker, we would know that the level of water is identical. Only the beaker has changed. However, a child in this stage will conclude there is more water in the tall beaker just because the level of water looks higher. Piaget argued that children are not capable of conservation during the pre-operational stage because of 3 weaknesses in the way they think. He called these weaknesses centration, irreversibility and egocentrism. Centration is the tendency to focus on one aspect of a problem and ignore other key aspects. Irreversibility is the ability to mentally reverse an operation. They cannot imagine objects or numbers reversed to their previous form. Egocentrism is the inability to take someone else's point of view. Animism, or the belief that even inanimate objects are living, results from egocentrism. Children assume that since they are alive and all other things must be too. Evaluation. McGarrigle and Donaldson found that when a naughty teddy was used to scatter sweets around, children were more likely to conserve the correct amount of sweets. This suggests Piaget's methods were simply not relevant to children. but the use of a teddy helped them understand. Similarly, McGarrigle found that rephrasing Piaget's original questions to simpler, more child-oriented forms helped increase the amount of correct answers they provided. So, is it that Piaget was correct, or just that his methodology was too complex for children's cognition? Stage 3, or the concrete operational stage. This stage sees another shift in children's cognitive thinking. It is aptly named concrete because children struggle to apply concepts to anything which cannot physically be manipulated or seen. Nevertheless, the child continues to improve their conservation skills, and by age 11 they can conserve numbers, weight and volume. The child can also understand principles of class inclusion. Perspective tasks become much easier, and children begin to understand that other people actually have different views of themselves. Simple maths such as addition, subtraction become much easier. Children also achieve conservation, reversibility and decentration during this stage. Reversibility is the ability to mentally reverse actions, and decentration is the ability to focus simultaneously on several aspects of a problem. Furthermore, children become less egocentric during this stage as they start to consider simultaneously different ways of looking at a problem. However, this stage is concrete. Piaget suggests children will struggle to apply any prior knowledge to abstract situations. They can perform operations only on tangible objects and real events. Evaluation. Tomlinson and Keisry, they found that acquisition of conservation does occur in the order Piaget suggested. Jahoda, however, found that 9-year-old Zimbabwean children had expert knowledge of small business and trade compared to British children of the same age. Zimbabwean children knew about the strategies involved in business, as it was hugely believed to have this knowledge from a young age in their culture. This is an important criticism for Piaget's theory. It doesn't appear to account for cross-cultural differences. Stage 4, the formal operational stage. Children at this stage acquire the ability to think hypothetically and outside the box. Logical conclusions can be inferred from verbal information, and concrete physical objects are no longer necessary. When presented with a problem, children at this stage can consider solutions to the problem in a logical manner. The children become increasingly adult-like with regards to their cognitive abilities. Evaluation. Martorano found a massive range in ability between 12 and 18-year-old females in the US. He found the ability to complete formal operational tasks successfully ranged from 15 to 95%. This suggests that formal operational principles may be acquired, but it takes a range of time to apply them to different situations. Danner and Day found that students trained to complete formal operational tasks showed increases in ability around 17 years of age. This suggests that the beginning of formal operational stage, that is age 11, marks a time where children can potentially acquire formal operational thought processes but may not specifically gain them without training. Critics of Piaget's theory. Although Piaget made important contributions to the research on cognitive development, his theory has come under attack for several reasons. Recent research has shown that he greatly underestimated children's capabilities. For example, researchers have shown that babies achieve object permanence much sooner than Piaget said they do. Children sometimes simultaneously develop skills that are characteristic of more than one stage, which makes the idea of stages seem less viable. Piaget ignored cultural influences. Research has shown that children from different cultures tend to go through Piaget's stages in the same order, but the timing and length of stages vary from culture to culture. Some people never develop the capacity for formal reasoning, even as adults. To summarize Piaget's work, Piaget was interested in the way a child's mind worked and developed. In his research, he was most concerned with maturation, that is how a child grows up. He felt that children went through stages in which their mind worked and was capable to make decisions. In his theory, a child goes through different phases in his or her life in which he showed new capabilities at each phase. Piaget came up with 4 stages of development: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational.
Introduction. Jean Piaget's prominent work is his theory on the 4 stages of cognitive development. Piaget's theory is based on stages whereby each stage represents a qualitatively different type of thinking. Children in stage 1 cannot think the same as children in stage 2, 3, or 4, etc. Transitions from one stage to another are generally very fast, and the stages always follow an invariant sequence. Another important characteristic of his stage theory is that they are universal. The stages will work for everyone in the world, regardless of their differences. Piaget believed that cognitive development is cumulative, that is, understanding a new experience grows out of a previous learning experience. Main elements of Piaget's cognitive development theory. There are 3 elements to Piaget's theory: schema, the processes that enable the transition from one stage to another, the 4 stages of cognitive development. Schema. A schema is the basic building block of intelligent behavior, a form of organizing information that a person uses to interpret the things he or she sees, hears, smells, and touches. A schema can be thought of as a unit of knowledge relating to one aspect of the world, including objects, actions, and abstract or theoretical concepts. The processes. Assimilation. Simply the process of incorporating new information into a pre existing schema. Assimilation is essentially fitting new information into schemata we already have in place. Unfortunately, this can lead to stereotyping. Accommodation. When coming across a new object for the first time, a child will attempt to apply an old schema to the object. Adaptation. Assimilation and accommodation are the 2 parts of adaptation, which is simply what it says: adapting our schemata to make an accurate enough model of the world we live in. Equilibrium. Piaget suggested that humans naturally strive to achieve a cognitive balance. There must be a balance between applying prior knowledge, assimilation, and changing schemata to account for new information, accommodation. The 4 stages of cognitive development. Piaget identified the following 4 stages in development of cognition: sensory motor, ages birth through 2, pre-operational, ages 2 through 7, concrete operations, ages 7 through 11, formal operations, ages 11 through 16. Stage 1. The sensory motor stage, birth to approximately 2 years. During this stage, information is received through all the senses. The child tries to make sense of the world during this stage, and as the name suggests, only senses and motor abilities are used to do so. The child utilizes innate behaviors to enhance this learning process, such as sucking, looking, grasping, crying, and listening. This stage is further divided into sub-stages: reflexes 0 to 1 month, primary circular actions 1 to 4 months, secondary circular reactions 4 to 8 months, coordination of secondary circular reactions 8 to 12 months, tertiary circular reactions 12 to 18 months, symbolic or mental representation 18 to 24 months. Stage 2, the pre-operational stage, 2 to 7 years. The mental representation of the sensory motor stage provides a smooth transition to semiotic functioning in the pre-operational stage. This essentially means that a child can use one object to represent another symbolically. A major characteristic of this stage is egocentrism, perception of the world in relation to oneself only. Children struggle to perceive situations from another point of view or perspective, as shown by Piaget and in Helder's Three Mountains task, 1956. Stage 3, the concrete operational stage, 7 to 11 years. This stage sees another shift in children's cognitive thinking. It is aptly named concrete because children struggle to apply concepts to anything which cannot physically be manipulated or seen. Children also achieve conservation, reversibility, and decentration during this stage. Reversibility is the ability to mentally reverse actions. Decentration is the ability to focus simultaneously on several aspects of a problem. Furthermore, children become less egocentric during this stage as they start to consider simultaneously different ways of looking at a problem. Stage 4, the formal operational stage, age 11 onwards. Children at this stage acquire the ability to think hypothetically and outside the box. Logical conclusions can be inferred from verbal information, and concrete physical objects are no longer necessary. When presented with a problem, children at this stage can consider solutions to the problem in a logical manner. Although Piaget made important contributions to the research on cognitive development, his theory has come under attack for several reasons. Recent research has shown that he greatly underestimated children's capabilities. For example, researchers have shown that babies achieve object permanence much sooner than Piaget said they do. Children sometimes simultaneously develop skills that are characteristic of more than one stage, which makes the idea of stages seem less viable. Piaget ignored cultural influences. Research has shown that children from different cultures tend to go through Piaget's stages in the same order, but the timing and length of stages vary from culture to culture. Some people never develop the capacity for formal reasoning, even as adults. To summarize, Piaget was interested in the way a child's mind worked and developed. In his research, he was most concerned with maturation, how a child grows up. He felt that children went through stages in which their mind worked and was capable to make decisions. In his theory, a child goes through different phases in his or her life in which they show new capabilities at each phase. Piaget came up with four stages of development: sensory motor, pre operational, concrete operational, and formal operational.